Barrett with us once again, who is going to be helping us in the stream. So I'm just going to bring him in right now, and we'll start talking here. There you go.
Hello. Hi, guys.
Yeah, so welcome, we're back. Yeah, once again, we're going to be working on Fusion 360. This episode is called We're going to Build a Hammer. If you remember in our last episode, we talked a little bit about what do? We built a block,
yep.
Then we built a circle, or a long handle almost.
Yep.
And then we learned how to put a screw hole on that if we wanted to.
Yep, and actually turn and actually generate the threads, model threads.
That's we talked about. I don't think we generated it, did we?
We actually did. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, we're going to go start from scratch here because we accidentally deleted the file. I know, smart going on my part.
Well, it's all for the best because we didn't start that out with the intention of making a hammer, but we're basically going to make a bit of a simplified Thor-esque hammer. Should be fun.
Yeah, I'm just learning how to get this all done, and so we're gonna have some fun. Hey, Kilroy, how you doing? If you don't know Kilroy, definitely check out his channel. His channel is Kilroy 79763 on Twitter. So on Twitter, on Twitch.
Right. So shall we begin?
Yes, we shall. Go here, and whose screen shall we share this time? I think we'll share mine.
Okay.
Stream. There we go. So we're just starting off blank, so it's brand new.
Yep.
So if I remember correctly, design, we want to be in design mode, correct?
Yep, you want to be in the design space, yes.
Okay. And then I hit create.
And, you're actually going to hit sketch. You're going to start sketch. Yep. Which is the very first one on the left there, right next to design. That plus with the green arrow.
Oh, create.
Sorry, the little square with the green plus. That one.
Just taking its time right now.
Oh dear.
Yeah, I think I just crashed. Ha, cute. Well, we can always go to you, Mr. Barrett, while I figure out what's going on here at Fusion 360. There you go.
All right. Here's mine. Forgive the aspect ratio. I've got an ultra wide. Very nice for CAD work, actually. So here I'm going to create a new sketch. The other thing to note is that we're working in the solid workspace. We'll get into that later if we touch into working with.
Also, they can watch the first episode where we covered all that too, which is already up on the Canadian Maker YouTube channel. So if you missed an episode and you can't find it on here, check the Canadian Maker space. We put them back out on Tuesdays afternoons around 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Okay, so I'm going to start off here. I'm going to hit the S to toggle the sketch shortcuts, and I'm going to start typing rectangle, and then I want a center rectangle. So I'm going to start that from the origin. I'm going to, how big do we want this guy? Let's say, well, we want it to be able to be printable, so let's make it 180 by 60.
Oh, come on.
Nope, that's not a very good, let's reduce that. Let's go.
Now, is there a passkey I'm supposed to press to call up rectangle?
For the rectangle, the easiest way to just do it is if you learn that S shortcut, that brings up a little box that you can start typing into rather than using your mouse and going up to the create. If you want to, you can go up to create and hit the drop down. So up here, there is a drop down and you can go and select rectangle, center rectangle. But that's slow. That takes you time. You can learn to do it that way. And I've been in the bad habit of doing that, but that slows you down. The faster way to do it is to hit S. No, yeah, it doesn't like the fact that I'm currently in a dimension.
Oh, I see what it says. So yeah.
If you hit S, I can start typing rectangle, and as soon as I start typing rectangle, I get my options for that.
Are we doing a center rectangle by the looks of this?
Yeah, I did a center rectangle. What that does is it automatically adds in the constraints that are keeping this in parallel and keeping it centered. So it's just less work for us in the long run. And I'm just messing with my geometry a little bit here, trying to find something. I think that's going to look okay in the end. So we've got our dimensions square. It's black because it's fully defined. I'm going to finish the sketch and hit E for extrude. And it's got my body selected. I'm going to create a new body. And I'm going to extrude this by 80 millimeters symmetrically. And I'm selecting that I do the whole width. So now if I go and I rotate that model, oh yes, I did my dimension wrong. I went 80 when I settled on 60, so I need to go to edit feature. Now there's two settings here. I can do half length, in which case I would do 30 because it's going to do 30 per side, or I can set it to be the entire width, and then I tell it the full dimension I want. So you've got that choice of how you want to dimension when you're using the symmetrical extrusion. So now I have my 60 by 120 block. Now, it doesn't look very Hammer-like yet, or at least not very Thor-esque. So what I want to get into today is the fact that there are multiple ways to do things in CAD. You can approach this next task in several ways. The easiest thing that I think to do in this case is to chamfer. Helps if I type. So I'm just going to select the face. Sorry, not faces, edges. I'm thinking of a different tool to select the face. So there's my edges. Right now it's set to equal distance on the chamfer. So let's make it 20 millimeter chamfer. That's actually too much.
Yeah.
15. Oops. Apparently we don't have one of our sides selected. There we go. What I did there is I hit the control key and I went back and I selected the missing side. So I can do that here. So see if I hit control, it highlights the original face. I just click that side and there we go. There's my, that's still too much. So let's drop it to 10. That's looking about Thor-esque, I'd say.
Yeah, it looks half decent.
Yeah. But let's say I want to make the distance go in a little bit differently. I actually have some options here. I can set this to be 2 distances.
Okay, I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger for us so we can see it clearly. There you go, people.
So now, well, I'll do this a little bit more exaggerated so that you can get a good idea of what's going on here. That's the wrong dimension. The one thing that I find slightly annoying with this is it doesn't give you a very good indication of which dimension's which. So you have to play around with it until you get what you're after. So there I just changed the one of the dimensions, and I did it by a little bit more of an exaggeration. So I'm going to go 15 by 10. Now you notice that there was another option there I could do angle, but yeah, it's not bad. I still want to edit that feature. I'm going to go back to the 20. I kind of like the 20. All right, so I'm in here. I've got 4 edges selected. I want to apply this to the other side. There's a couple ways you can do this. One thing that you can do in CAD, and it's a very useful thing to do, is you make half a model and you mirror it, which can really reduce your work. In this case, because we're going for a fairly simple shape, I've decided to just model the whole thing. So what I can do here, really simply, is I can just go back in and add these edges, and now I've got the whole, oh, hey, it's done something interesting on that one edge.
Huh? Let's see that.
It's chamfered it wrong. Yeah.
Interesting.
Interesting, yeah.
Is the face even? I think you got another face selected in that, don't you?
Yeah, it's, no. So it's not happy there. So we're just gonna
Yeah, because when you select that side, it seems to auto-select the other side.
What it's doing is it's applying the constraints incorrectly.
Oh, okay.
So it's actually reversing the direction, and it's something that happens on occasion. It can be a little bit silly. So I can just go and do a separate chamfer command to get around this. Or I could just have made half the model and mirror the whole thing. There are so many ways to do this and end up with this same result. So I'm going to experiment here. Which side is which? And it's done the same thing to me again. That's really strange. Why is it having this problem? Well, in that case, I know what I'm going to do. There's a really, really odd thing that can happen on occasional model. And I find this is one of those things that just every once in a while your model will be a little bit on the funny side. Nope. And what? Just wanted to be modeled with in the other direction. But there we go. We ended up with our end result. So that's one way to produce this shape. But I said that there are multiple ways to do this. So I'm actually going to lose a drawing. I'm not going to save it. Instead now I'm going to create a new sketch. And this time I'm going to approach it a little bit differently. I'm again going to use the center rectangle because it's still an easy way to do this. But this time I'm going to make the center rectangle 60 by 60. And then I'm going to extrude that by 60. So I've only made half the model. So this time, now I can, and I do want to see where my origin is just for the sake of this. So I'm going to turn on my origins here so that I can see that that's the end of the plane. That's the end I'm going to end up mirroring it on. So I'm going to work on this end here. And I could just chamfer it again. However, there's another way that I can attack creating this shape. I can create another sketch on the side of it. And then I can just use my line tool and I'm going to add another feature into the mix here. I'm going to add in the project tool. Project is going to project the square of that face. So see if I hover over the square, I'm getting this red line around it. I'm going to do that, and that's going to select that entire face to project. So it's now projected those features, which made these fully contained. I'm going to make sure that these are coincident, and it's going to throw up errors when it says that they're already there, but I'm just making sure that they are there. You'll notice that they're blue because they're not dimensioned, so let's just fix that. This was 10.
How much do we want to extrude it out of?
I extruded it by 60. So I did 60 by 60 by 60 when I made the cube. And actually, I'm going to delete that right there. I'm going to do a line across here. I'm going to make sure that I go in and I turn that into a construction line because I don't want this line to actually show up. I don't want it to be a feature. But I'm going to use this construction line. And I'm going to use the mirror command. And I'm going up to the menus there. But selecting the object that I'm going to mirror would be this line. My mirror line is that center line that I just created. Boom. There's my mirror. And those two items are the same.
Okay, so you just mirrored the same side there.
Yeah.
By using the line command.
I just use the line command. I use this line here that I created as a construction line, and I just made a normal line, and then I selected it and hit X, which turns it into a construction line. So in that way, if I select, you notice when I try to select the object, it's not selecting the half.
Yeah.
Watch what happens if I change this line back to a non-construction line. Now it's selecting separately.
Okay.
And if I change this to a construction line, it sees the object as a whole, because that it doesn't see that line as a break into a separate segment of the face. So now I'm just going to Control Select, and I can hit Extrude. And what I can choose to do is cut, and I'm going to do this by 60. And of course it's going the wrong way, so -60. There we go. And I just cut it. Now I could do this way by, so let's say I wanted this to be unequal. I could go around and I could do this around the whole body. This is a legitimate option for doing this. It's not as simple as using the chamfer tool. But it is certainly a doable way to create this shape. And I wanted to show that off. Now I'm going to use the chamfer tool this time to do these two. So 10. And I'm getting the two values again because I'm in the 2 dimensions mode. So there we go. Now I've got half a hammer. So now I want to mirror this. So if I use mirror over on this side before, when we're in the sketch, mirror is a little bit different than what we've got now.
Okay.
Now I need to go to modify to use mirror because I want to mirror the body. Where is it? Sorry.
Yeah.
So
when in doubt, hit S, right?
Yep. So pattern type, I'm going to go to bodies here because I'm going to take a body that already exists. So that allows me to select that entire body. One object selected. Mirror plane. Then I'm going to go to my origins here. That's the plane that I want to use to mirror this on. And it's showing me a preview. There we go. There is my mirrored hammer. Now, what it's done is it's created as 2 separate bodies because I got...
Because you used the mirror option.
I used the body option to do this. So it's created as 2 separate bodies. That could be bad depending on what I'm trying to do. And I actually want to do that. Let's get started with that. So in this case, I can convert this to a new component. So I'm going to create a component here, and I'm going to call it hammerhead. And to that component, I'm just going to add the bodies. Boom. And it's added those 2 bodies to the component. So now
it's all one part.
It's still seeing it as 2 separate bodies, so I can still interact with a half of it. That's actually useful because, again, I still only have to do something to half of this. If I modify body 1, the changes
then body 2 modifies automatically.
Yes. But when I want to go to export this thing or deal with it, I'll deal with it as an entire component. So that's a completely valid way to produce this item. So now let's go about. We've got a small problem to deal with here if we want to use this as an actual hammer. So I've just gone and selected the bottom face and oriented it towards myself. And there are a couple of ways that you can do this, but this is because I used the origin here before as my center point, I don't really need to do a sketch for this next step. But one valid option for this would be to create a sketch on here and put a point on the center. And I'll show you how to do that right now. So I'm going to create a sketch on this plane. And I'm going to create a point. And I'm going to create that point right on the origin. And if I finish that sketch, I can then use that point when I go to create my hole. So at point single or from sketch can allow you to use multiple holes, but it can also just be a very accurate way of positioning your hole. So there, you selected. Ooh, that's a bit big.
Yeah, I think it's a little too big.
Yeah.
How big is the hole that you said you make?
So we're going to play around with this a little bit here. So instead of a simple hole like we did last time, I'm going to use a counterbore hole.
Okay.
And that's for a couple of reasons. I want the hammer handle to fit inside of the hammer and stop. So I don't want you to see I don't want you to see that joint around the bottom of the hammer. I want that to kind of go up inside of it just a little bit.
So just like a countersink upward.
So a countersink is angled. So this would be a countersink if you see the picture here. I don't know if you, so on the right hand side of my screen where in the model you see that there's the angled edges. That's a countersink.
Okay.
Or is straight side.
Okay.
So now we're going to make this a simple hole. We're going to make it a tapped hole. Actually, no, I'm not. Yes, we are. Sorry. Tapped, full thread, which means that the thread's going to go all the way to the bottom. See the difference here in offset thread would leave a gap.
Well, do you want it to go all the way down to the bottom because it looks like it's going all the way out of the to the other end of the hammer?
So we haven't set that distance yet. We haven't set how far it's going. That's partly why we're seeing that. So the first value here I'm going to set my distance. And this is 60 millimeters. So I probably want this to go in fairly far. I want it to go at least 40 millimeters, I think. So that's a good distance into the head for a really good connection. The distance of the counterbore, I'm thinking 10 millimeters is too much. 5 is probably more than sufficient, just to hide that edge and to make things like mate up really nicely. So let's see here. What size do I want to make this? 50 millimeters is way too big. And again, I think tending to the larger size thread here is going to be a little bit better for 3D printing. That's still going to be an awfully big handle. So it's 25. No.
You can always resize it in, say, something like when you're throwing this into the G-code software, you can always resize it too. So
I can change this a little bit later, but these dimensions are going to be important to what I'm going to do next. So choosing them now is helpful. So I've made that handle 22.5 millimeters. I'm actually going to do, so this is a little bit of a trick on my part. In order to make the handle fit nicely, I'm going to add 50 thousandths of a millimeter there. Or sorry, 0.05 millimeters to the overall diameter, which is 0.025 millimeters per side. But because it's diameter, I'm doing it around the whole side.
Yeah.
So I want a right-hand thread. It's going to be an M2 by 2.5, which looks like the coarsest thread that I can get there. And I'm going to, this is very important here, I'm going to click modeled because I want these threads to actually be built into the model. I don't just want an image here and a designation on a drawing. Because I'm going to 3D print this, I need these to actually be modeled. I need these threads to be able to be used. So I want to remember those values, but I can always come back to them to get them later. So when I'm done, I clicked OK, and there we go. There's our full depth hole with our 5mm inset. So that's our base beginning of our hammer. So now we need a handle. One thing I can do is I can hide that component, but I don't necessarily need to do that.
Don't you want the component to be there so you can measure out the circle for the handle to make sure the handle will work?
I can do that if I want to. I don't need to, but in this case, I'm going to create a new sketch on this plane. One thing I could do is I could go back and use that same sketch that I used for the points for the hole tool.
Oh, okay.
I don't recommend doing that though. When you're using the hole tool, I recommend using a separate sketch for locating holes. Sometimes you can get away with using it on a shared sketch, but other times it can just cause chaos. So in my experience, it's just better off to use a separate sketch. It's one extra feature on your design history, but you're going to run into less problems. In general, though, I try to like to put as much on one sketch as possible, and I will absolutely do 2 or 3 features from the same sketch where I think that that's going to save time or work well for me. But there's some thought that goes into whether or not I want to use one sketch to create multiple features, or I want to do a sketch per feature. And that'll depend on how I might want to modify it later on down the line. One thing that you'll learn doing CAD in this way, there are some things that are hard to go back and change, because if you go back and change something earlier on in your timeline, later objects will be affected by that because they were referenced from features that you created. So you can break your model. It's something that the more you do this, it'll get really easy to deal with. The first couple of times you'll be like, oh my goodness. My best bit of advice to a person: do what you can, try and figure out what's going on. But once you reach that point where nothing's cooperating, save it, start over. Because you know where you want to go this time, you'll be able to make a cleaner model. You'll be able to do it in a little bit more logical fashion. You've worked out the process. Sometimes starting over and doing it with the forethought that you now have is just going to be faster than trying to fix it. I have made some really large stuff, and it's one of the reasons why later getting into assemblies and making things in parts is really useful, because if you mess up one part, you can go back and redo that part rather than necessarily redoing the whole shebang.
Yeah.
So in this case, I can use the quick shortcut C for circle, and I know my dimension. I could just project that hole that I cut there, but I don't want to do that in this case. I am going to make this exactly 22.5. So remember, I made that hole 22.55. And that's just to leave a little bit of clearance when we try to put this in, because we're 3D printing it, and FDM tolerances. I find most of the time 0.2 millimeters gives you a pretty tight fit. I said 0.2. Wait a minute, I've just done. Yep, sorry, I've goofed. I think it's 22 millimeters.
Oh, you forgot to constrain it?
No, I did 0.05 instead of 0.5.
Oh.
0.2 millimeters I find is a decent clearance. So if I want a kind of a snap fit on something, I find 0.2 millimeters per side. So if I've got a square object, I take every single side. I'll add or remove 0.2 millimeters from it. So there's a 0.4 millimeter per dimension gap or difference in size between the peg that I'm trying to insert into the hole. And I'll find that gives me a reasonably good press fit most of the time. Now, that's without a really finely tuned printer. You know, if you get your printer really dialed in, you might be able to do a finer tolerance than that. But I find that generally works pretty well for a tight press fit. If I want a little bit looser, you know, I increase the amount of that difference. So now I've got this circle here. Just to avoid any mistakes, I'm just going to turn off for a second the that's why is my sketch not?
So I guess being back at sketch, you're going to now go C for circle?
It's actually created this sketch on the body itself, which I don't want. That's gonna cause me problems. All right. So I'm going to go back and actually I'm going to cancel that. So we're going to use another feature here. We're going to use a construction plane, and I'm going to make an offset plane here. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to select. Can you see this plane that I've got selected there? The XY plane.
Yeah, I can kind of see it there. Yeah.
See it blink a little bit. So I've selected that plane. Now I want an offset of negative 30 millimeters is going to offset that to that face. So now, instead of using that body, I'm going to use this offset plane. And it's still doing this under the... I'm regretting making that
fusion
component.
crashing every 10 seconds while I'm following you. It crashed 3 times while I tried to follow you. And now yours is doing something similar to mine was doing.
Yeah. No, I'm having issues because I made this into a component earlier than I normally would. I'm not following my usual kind of workflow here.
Oh, okay.
So this is actually causing some problems. So I'm going to delete the component, which takes me back to the bodies and separate sketches. And now I'm going to recreate that construction plane on the XY. Negative 30. This is where I was talking about sometimes those features that you've created can cause you issues. Now I can hide the body and I can still see my plane. The reason I wasn't able to before is it was including the plane within the component because I've created a component. So it wanted to treat everything as that component. I could get around that by making a new component and working within that new component, but for the sake of doing this, I didn't want to go that route. So now I can create my, and I'm using most different things here. C for circle, 22 millimeters is going to be my diameter, and then I'm going to extrude that in 2 directions.
And we're going to extrude down or extrude up?
I'm extruding to 2 sides, and there's
okay.
there's a reason I'm going to do this. So I'm going to extrude in one direction by 40 millimeters, and in the other direction, I'm going to go 100 millimeters. And you can sort of see why in...
yeah, I see that there. Yeah, what you were doing.
And I just committed the cardinal sin. I forgot to check what's happening in the operation bottom down here, so it did cut. What I want is a new body. But see how easy that was to fix?
Yep.
So there's my new body, but you can see that it's, if I select it, you can see that it is going up inside of my hammer.
Yep.
Now I'm going to have to do a little bit of work on this in order to make it fit in there properly. I can't really show that. Turn off the visibility of that. You know what I did? Unintentionally?
You deleted your body?
Deleted the hole.
Oops.
By removing the because I'd done the hole after.
That's right, because you canceled the hole beforehand. You took out the threads and everything else to redo the body.
While it was a component, so
yeah.
So we're going to go back and redo that. So I'm going to create a sketch on my bottom plane, and I'm going to use the point command again for this. Finish sketch, hole, and we're going to go through all of this all again. The sketch point's selected.
Yeah, but last time you did this, it didn't allow you to take it. Now this time it's going to allow you to take it?
So this is still going to create this. This is what happened the last time is I created this while it was part of the component. I'd added those two bodies to the component, so the sketch was attached to the component. When I deleted the component, this feature went away because it was part of the component, not part of the. So now it's going to be it's going to be applied to both of them. So this is modeled. It does have all of my features that
because we have the handle's in there. It's still there. Yeah. It's just we can't see it right now. Correct?
Yeah, the handle's there, but I've turned off the visibility. Over here on the left, I've turned the visibility off. So there it is. I can make it visible again.
Okay.
So everything looks right with my parameters there. I've still got the
Sorry, it was a little fast. I didn't see you make it unselectable body. Sorry.
So now there's this objects to cut feature, and it's going to cut body 1 and body 2. I could do something funny. Let's say if I unselected half, it would only cut half the circle. I don't want to do that, but
that'd be weird.
So now I can cut that in, and then I can bring my body back here. So I'm going to hide those two bodies, and I'm going to show this one. Because now we need to.
Oh, so it didn't put the cut into the handle. Interesting.
No, it doesn't. And
the hexo whatever it's called, right? Helix or whatever.
There's my thread tool. So why is it? So that I want to make this modeled. I don't want this to be full length. I want some control over this. I don't want an offset. I want the length of the thread to be 40 millimeters. And the size doesn't seem right. It's not.
Yeah, because wasn't the inner cut supposed to be like 5 millimeters inside?
Yeah, no, it's so it's 20 millimeters threaded. Okay. That I just selected. So I dropped it down to 20, and then that gave me my M20 by 2.5. And apply. There we go. There's my thread. So that's 40 millimeters. Now, this top bit here might not thread in very well. So what I can do here, there's a couple of ways that I can do this, but this is a convenient opportunity to show you another way of doing this. So I've rotated my view so that I'm seeing the right side. So what I want to do is fix a little issue that's going to occur if I leave the threads like this. So I'm going to create a new sketch here, and I am going to use the line tool. And it doesn't really matter where I start this, but I'm going to create a
chamfer.
No, It's going to have that effect, but I'm doing this to a... Come on. That's not what I'm trying to modify the angle. There we go. I want a 45-degree angle. And another line. Okay, now I've just drawn these lines that don't meet up. Easy way to fix this. Under the Modify menu, I can hit Extend and see what that's going to do to this line. It's going to extend it.
Yep.
And then I can use T. There's a shortcut for trim, which is T for trim. And trim that off. And now, I don't really want this dimension that I have on here. So I'm going to hit dimension, go into the dimension menu, move that dimension. And I'm just going to make this 5. I want the two to be equal, so equal and... Oh, interesting. That I didn't realize had happened.
It's longer than what it needs to be?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, they created the line as two sections. So there we go. If I make those equal, that dimension applies to both. Now, all I need to do, because it's not fully defined, I just need to enter a dimension. I need to give a dimension from this line to the origin. And I'm going to make that 10. That looks a little tight. 11. Nope. Sorry. So this is going to give me, no, I'm going to go 11 on this one. That's a little better. So everybody see what I've done here? I've created a constrained triangle 11 by 15. I'm going to add one more feature into this drawing. I'm going to draw a line from the center here up. Doesn't really matter to me how long it is, but the program likes to have things have a length. So I'm going to make that 12 millimeters for no particular reason. And I'm going to turn it into a construction line. And finish my sketch. Now I'm going to use the revolve command. So
so that now becomes a revolve around the...
my profile is selected. I'm going to select my axis here. And it's going to revolve around the edge. And it's actually doing a little bit too much. It's cutting further than I really need it to. So I can go and I can modify the dimensional constraints that I put on this. So if I go back to my sketch and edit that sketch, it definitely can be higher up and further out. So there we go. That's a less extreme cut on it, but that should now make that thread in fairly easily. Yeah, and I can play around with those dimensions until I'm happy with it. And in this case, I'm going to make it 5. Nope, sorry, that was... Yeah, I'm happier with that. So there's a nice tidy little chamfer off the end there, so that it will thread in neatly. So now if I re-enable the other 1/2 of the body, you can see that it's going to fit in. I've got one more problem that I can address in that same sketch. So remember I talked about the clearances. Oops, there's a mistake. I extruded that by 40 millimeters, which is the depth of my original hole. When I did the hole construction. So I'm going to go back to my thread feature here.
Now, would it be just easier just to cut off what you're missing?
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change thread feature here, and I'm going to change this to 35.5.
Okay.
And it doesn't like there being two. The reason that I did that 0.5 again is I wanted a gap, a little clearance there. See, there's a little bit of space.
Yep.
So my thread is going to bottom out up here, but I wanted just a little tiny hair breadth of a gap there.
Yeah, but it looks like it's not matching the thread at all, though. When I'm looking at it here, I can see like there's a gap in between the thread and the actual handle.
It's created the thread. It hasn't lined them up. It's the same thread, but it doesn't automatically align them for you because it doesn't know that those two. If I wanted to change this, I could probably force it to change, but it's the same thread.
Okay.
What was important when I selected that M20 by 2.5, I've used M20 by 2.5. Now, what I'm afraid of is that we're going to have an issue when we print this out, that the fit's going to be too tight. I'm not sure that this is actually going to thread in. I've not done this myself. We can create this manually if we need to. We can model a thread manually. That's something that I've done in class. It's been a while since I've had to do that, but I can certainly walk us through that. And in that case, you would probably see it fit a little bit more. But I have one problem here that I do want to address,
Okay.
which is the top here. I haven't left any gap there.
Okay.
So I'm going to do that now, and I'm going to do that by modifying this sketch again.
So we're just keep on modifying the screw sketch is what we're going to be doing?
Well, I'm doing this because I can. There's no reason not to do another feature on here. So I'm just going to draw a rectangle, and this would be a hell of a lot easier if I turned off body 2. So there we go. I've got that. I'm going to dimension this to be like these dimensions aren't going to matter as long. Nope, I need that to be 4. These dimensions didn't matter, but this one will. This is going to be how far it is off the bottom. So remember, my overall height's 40 millimeters from the center because I extruded it from both sides. So because I did that, because I did this that way, I know that I can go to 39.8 because I'm only going to take off 0.2 millimeters here because it's not two separate sides that I'm trying to keep. It's one side. What? Eh? Oh, yeah. Okay. I was thinking I was actually doing my dimension from the bottom of the bottom here, but I'm doing it from the origin itself. So wrong value. So turn off this body. Why am I not seeing my actual sketch? There we go. So I got my dimension wrong here. I'm going to make this 9.8. Use the right dimension. Yes. That's a little more like it. It's 9.8 because we had a 60 millimeter object extruded from this. Like it was drawn from its center point. So the origin is at the center, the dead center of the object. I then did a hole 40 millimeters in from one side.
Yeah.
So that's 10 millimeters away from the center origin. So
okay.
that's how I arrived at 9.8 there.
All right.
So, and now I just need one more dimension from here to fully constrain this. And I'm going to make this 11, I think. 12 because I made it 24.
So now we're making sure all the pieces don't move or change.
Yeah, so now I define them. Now the outer edges have gone black. And now I can extrude this piece. You notice it left a little cutout here.
Yep.
So I need to select that. This is the one disadvantage of doing multiple features in one model. If you miss something like that, it can affect your model. But now what I need to do, I want this to affect only body 3. I want this to be a cut. Because this is located in the center, I want this to be a symmetric distance, and I'm going to make it to...
So can you use the revolve tool on that too, or no?
I could have, but in this case, this is simpler because I'm just chopping off a disc, basically.
Oh, okay.
So this is a perfectly doable way to do that. And now I can turn off the sketch. And if I turn the body back on, the other body, you can see that I now have
space
gap there.
Yeah.
And that's just the dead point. And that should make sure that this threads in fairly nicely and fairly securely. I'm wondering something's gone weird here. I think my threading tool went a little bit nuts and changed the diameter of my entire... And I think I might
That's
know
what I thought too when I was looking at it, because I was looking at it only going, I think you changed your diameter.
Let's see. Right. How about showing you that? There we go.
Do you have your diameter defined?
19.791. So it changed the overall diameter of my entire...
Thought so.
All right. So...
Because you didn't have diameter constrained, did you?
No, that's not what happened. What happened was the thread tool basically went a little nuts and threaded it reduced the length of the entire rod, even though I only did the threading part way. What I really should have done was reduce the diameter of that section first. So if I'd done this correctly, which I didn't, what I should have done was when we were back at... I'm going to roll the history marker back to this stage. So when I was right here, what I should have done was actually hack off a section of this, make it a little bit smaller. So I can attempt to do that now, but this is potentially going to cause problems because I'm essentially trying to do something in the past. But I'm going to make a 20 millimeter circle here, and I'm going to extrude the outside edge as a cut, and my distance is going to be -35. So there, now I've created that. Now if I roll my history marker forward, there should be some... Wow.
I think something got screwed up there, did it?
Yes, well, what got screwed up was the definition of where this thread is starting. So if I turn this off, turn on body 3. So okay, I get what's going on. This is going to be a bugger to fix because that's actually that's cute. That's actually kind of problematic to fix. Because the thread command itself is actually killing that section. So, delete feature. Oops. So again, I'm going to go and roll my history marker back. that's the sketch for those two items. So I actually go back one more step here. And then I'm going to find the thread tool. How we're going to redefine the thread. So to select the face, we're going to select that. The reason that happened, I now understand, because the outer edge of this cylinder here was selected. So it was trying to work with the outer edge of that cylinder, but what I needed to select was this cylinder, because I've changed the dimension. So essentially, it was a problem of the feature that I was trying to work with didn't exist as far as it was concerned.
Okay.
So model thread, M20 by 2.5. So I don't want it full length. Actually, yes, I do. In this case now, because we modified it, I can go the full length right to the bottom there. And that'll be fine. So that, in a way, made things a little bit easier. Now, if I move my features forward, there we go. That's what we were aiming for in the first place. So, even people who do this a lot make mistakes, but it's just figuring out what happened and how to fix it.
Okay, now do you still have the threads cut in the actual hammer itself? The head.
I was just looking at that because that looks like something's gone wrong there. Okay, so this side is correct. And this side has got a problem. What's going on here? Interesting.
So what do you mean one side has a problem? I still see it cutting the hole, but what's wrong with it?
Well, do you see this edge here on the outside of it? Something's going on around here, which is different than... So body 1 is cut correctly. That's fine.
Okay.
But body 2 has gone wrong. And I suspect what's happened is when either the thread feature or the hole feature were created, I had... You know what? I had the body visible probably when I did this. So... Oh, whoops. I know where this happened. This happened here. Nope, not that. Right here. Edit feature. This extrusion right here, object to cut. I didn't want it to cut body 1. There you go. It was that simple. So
and it's easy to fix, right? You just have to select.
That was just going back and fixing it. So again, the alignment of these two is not fantastic because the body 3 is rotated in comparison to bodies 1 and 2. Now I could probably alter that if I wanted to, but I don't need to. It's going to work. So now I've got a basic hammer with a basic handle. We can go in and we can do some other modifications to it. We might have wanted to make it a little bit longer. So that was our extrude here, edit feature, made it by 100. Let's make it 40 on one end. This needs to, I want to keep this within a 200 millimeter print volume. So I can go up to 100 and...
Well, I can always print this on the CR10, which has a 400 build height, so...
Well, but that actually is a decent size there. So that will be 195 millimeters long. Now, the catch with this is, in order for those threads to print properly, you can't print it on its sides. You've got to print this vertically. You've got to print it sticking up in the air.
For threads? Yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
So well, I would print those in 2 parts. This is going to be kind of
problematic because this is up near the top of your build volume, and you've got this cylinder. So if I was going to make this print its best, I would probably...
You want that in 2 parts.
I would add a helper feature. You could actually print it in 2 parts, which would make the printing a little bit faster. That would be one option. But one thing I'm going to do here is add a oops. I'm going to add on what's on a 50 millimeter disc on the bottom. What I'm going to do is I'm going to extrude that by 0.2 millimeters. And it's going the wrong way, so negative 0.2, 20. So that's going to be a sacrificial disc. It's 1 layer thick that you can break off, but that will help give you some adhesion to the bed. I've basically
but
created
if I was going to do that, I would be using a brim.
Well, that's basically what I've done is given you a brim.
Yeah, but why add a brim when I'm going to be able to add a brim in the CAD program itself, anyways? In the G code.
Yeah, absolutely. You can do that in your slicer. So I'll remove that because it is not necessary in this case. So and do this by undo wasn't the way to do it. There we go. But that would be an option for you to do if you wanted to design a feature. We could design this handle to sketch in half, but we've accomplished our goal of making a simple handle. A simple hammer. Let's go ahead and use another favorite command here. Let's use the well, actually, no. Fillet command doesn't work for this because design logic. We've used chamfers everywhere else. So if I'm going to put anything on the surfaces here, I'm going to use a chamfer.
Yeah, but you want to keep that surface non-chamfered. I mean, if you're going to build, so say if the handle
for printing, yeah. So I would actually probably split this in half to print it. We can do that now if you want.
Yeah. So what I was saying is the body itself. We already know the hammer top screws into the handle anyways. So how do we divide the 2 parts so that say something like if I want to throw it into say Kira, Idea Maker, or Prusa, how would we take that file now and make it available for the G code to understand it?
Oh,
so I can throw it into
like
either it'll be formatted in STL or OBJ format.
So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the visibility of my origin. I don't need that anymore. I'm going to turn off the first body. If I wanted to go back and turn these into components, I could do that at this point. And since I'm pretty much finished the modeling. But really, if I want to do this, I can go here and go to 3D print. So I'm just going up to basically the file menu, 3D print. It wants the selections, and it's not letting me select both. Yeah, it's giving me a hard time. Damn it. Hang on a second. Yeah, I've created a problem for myself. New components.
You got to make it a component before you can save it.
I might need to. I'm emptying from bodies. Okay. Oh no. It created them as 2 separate components.
Oh, is that what happened?
Yep, it's still treating them as 2 separate bodies.
Too bad there's not like a merge or group option.
There is essentially. So there's rigid group. So now if I try to 3D print and I select my rigid group, it doesn't like that still. I've not attempted to do this before, as you can tell. This is not a normal. This is not a normal workflow for me. So let's see if we can figure this out.
I would always save and go back to it next week.
Yeah, we absolutely could. I think I can figure this out. So a lot of sometimes in 3D printing, you've got to figure out how to do this. Like here's, if you wanted to split a body, you can do that. Combine. That was the feature I needed. Duh.
Sometimes just talking it out helps you understand what you're looking at.
Join. All right, there we go. Joined. And I can remove.
Oh yeah, now the line's gone. That was like one solid body.
I'm going to delete those components. Yeah, I was afraid of that. So it had done this. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to use the modify join again.
Oh, it deleted something it wasn't supposed to delete?
It wasn't seeing them. Escape. Combine. That one. That one. Join. Oh, there we go. So now we can do this. We go to 3D print, select our object. The resolution's fairly high. We could export it directly to Cura. I tend not to.
No, I want to say it does STL. So
what I tend to do is I turn off send to 3D print utility. There are some other refinement options that you can do here, but once I do this, body.stl. Now, one thing that I could do here before I do that, so this right here, this is a little trick. Where is the rename function? There we go. So now I'm going to do the same process again. 3D print. You notice it came up with a name? Because I went and I named the body that I was exporting. It automatically took the body from that.
Oh, okay.
So let's go to... There's my hammerhead. And I can now, I want to export my handle, so I can do that as well.
So you guys select each body when you're exporting it, correct?
Sorry, yeah. Yeah, you need to do this separately. 3D print, select the body, hi, hammer handle. There we go. STL is done. So we now have a simplified Thor-esque hammer ready to attempt a 3D print. And we'll find out whether or not those threads fit. What I'll probably do for Ron is make another version of this handle that's much shorter, just so you can print the test. And I'll probably break down just a chunk of the hammer so that he doesn't have to print the whole thing just to test the threading.
No, so there you go. How to build a hammer. Unfortunately, both my version of Autodesk did not want to continue starting and just crashed.
Well, at least my connection didn't drop out a bunch of times tonight.
Yeah, like the last time.
Yeah. So hopefully that was useful to folks. It's kind of fun working through these things and doing something a little bit different than you've done. I've never had a reason to try to model Force Hammer before.
Hey,
so
this is all about modeling. I figured hammer might be a good way to play around and just try it out.
Absolutely, and we've got some interesting ideas for next week too. So we'll give you a report on what happened with the hammer threads. and whether or not that worked, which could potentially lead to the hard way of doing the threads. And we'll experiment with that if necessary. But Ron also has a really interesting little idea in store for you next week. I'm not going to spoil that surprise.
Yeah, that has something to do with, well, I'm also an amateur radio operator, so I have my own license. So we're going to try something here, which I'm going to talk to him about after the show. But anyways, guys, thank you all for watching. And until next time, have fun printing. And remember, if you want more info on my other stuff I do, you can always go to our Discord, discord.gg/H, capital T, small x, and then capital V, small d, small h, small w, which you can see scrolling on the screen here. So thanks everyone for watching.
Gotta find a friendlier name for that.
Oh, we gotta figure out how to fix that.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll make a website and then I can have a tiny URL or URL titler or something. Just make it Discord, you know, yep. cmp.com/Discord or something like that.
Even just a tiny URL might work.
Yeah. You mean like a Bitly account? Yeah, I could make a Bitly account and just make a Bitly.
Yeah.
I'll have to look into Bitly and see if we can do that.
Anyway, thanks for watching, folks. And I hope you learned something or had a good chuckle at what we were doing. But anyway, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye now.